So I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break from trail running.
Come back tomorrow. You know it's not enough that I can make you laugh. Why try to borrow even more time you never have? It's too late, too late, too late, too late. Slide down the rooftop, slide down the rooftop. It's too late, too late, too late, too late. You'd have to rebuild me from the ground up, from the ground up.
6.71 miles, 11 minutes, 36 seconds per mile, 1,000 feet of climbing, and about 147 beats per minute on average for my run today. Day 2 out in Phoenix, running in the South Mountain Preserve area. This was a tough run for me, and I'm fine. I did fall, nothing broken, not even too bad in terms of scrapes. I do have a giant bruise on my backside, but in terms of like physical safety, absolutely fine. I've come through a lot worse. But today's run made me realize that I think I'm making some bad decisions when it comes to trail running, just because I'm not that familiar with it. I spend most of my time on roads, but I'm also taking risks that I think are unnecessary, and I just don't think I need to be doing them for a little bit. It's just not something that I really enjoyed today, and I don't think I'm going to be doing it for a little while. So today's run. I'm out in the Phoenix area. I'm obviously back in Chicago now in my home base, so everything's fine and I'm safe and I'm still running. But I was out in that area for work. Normally, this conference that I go to every year for the past several years now is out in Scottsdale, but this year it moved it downtown towards Phoenix. So rather than being out in the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve, which I've been running in previously, and I've really enjoyed running out there, I decided I would try something else because I'm trying to get in these runs before the conference starts every day in the morning, so I got to get out there early. An extra 20 minutes of driving each way means like a total of 40 minutes less running, so I decided I'd try to drive and run in a different, like hill. I call it a mountain range, but a hilly area closer to where the new venue was. So I thought I would do that. That's why I tried the South Mountain Preserve. This year was also different, not in just the venue change, but also because it was raining. I've never seen it rain in Phoenix. Phoenix is a desert, and but it rained for the entire day before I arrived, and almost the entire time that I was there for 2 days in Phoenix in March. So it was a really strange thing to see. So day 2 in the trails today, I would use the phoenix.gov website to figure out some of these running paths or trail areas to run in. And the way that the website was set up was nice because then you could click a button and then it would push you over to Google Maps. And then on Google Maps, the trails that the city of Phoenix lists as trails in the area would be like highlighted on the map in Google Maps. So I thought that was really great. So I was, instead of trying to figure out a way to like map a run or a route, I just, when I got to the trailhead, I would just map like a multi-point trip in Google Maps. And so for this particular trip, for whatever reason, even though I knew I'd be running at like 5 o'clock in the morning, right when the parks opened, I didn't bring a headlamp with me or any kind of lights to run with. I'm not used to running with lights because in Chicago, there's lights everywhere I run, even at night. And so I don't usually have to run with that. Normally I remember my headlamp, but I forgot it this time. So this time I was running like with the flashlight on my phone. And yesterday, the day before that, I did that for a while. And as like the sun kind of started to come up, even though it was raining and cloudy, I was getting, ambient light. I was able to run without the phone flashlight on, so I thought it would be fine today. And even on the second day, when I was getting there, it wasn't raining at the time that it started. So it was even a little bit brighter than it was the day before. But still, I thought I would run with the flashlight on the entire time. And essentially what I was doing is I was running with the flashlight showing light on the ground ahead of me. And then I had the map on so that I could see basically, I was just running along the trail and like watching like my little triangle dot going along the different turns and curves of the trail and kind of like running the dots as I was going. And so it's kind of a weird experience. I wasn't able to kind of, absorb the area around me or like visually just take it in because it was dark anyway. But I was focused mainly on what was immediately in front of me and then what the dot on the map was saying. So that's how I was running. So it was a little bit of a strange way to run. There were a couple times where you're getting up on a ridge or you're getting going uphill and you can kind of look to the side or look behind you and see like all the lights of the city of Phoenix, and that was kind of nice. But for the most part, I was just kind of running through the dark. And there was one point where like I was coming across like up a little bit of a hill coming down and then turning this way. And then I definitely took like a small bird, or not a small bird, but a medium-sized bird by surprise. So as I was coming down, I heard it like freak out and it started cawing and making noises and it fluttered away really quickly. And then it occurred to me that like I'm running at a time where a lot of animals are probably sleeping, even the nocturnal ones, probably sleeping because we're at that like, night to dawn kind of transitional period. And so I was really worried that I was going to scare an animal that wasn't a bird, maybe something that had claws or teeth. So that was like a concern in the back of my mind. The day before, it was like pouring rain during my run. And at one point in my run, I stopped because I saw something that looked like it was crouching along the side of the trail. And I was like, is that a person? Is that someone like pretending that they're hiding in the dark, like in plain sight? Or is that an animal like scoping me out? I couldn't tell what it was. And I kind of was trying to like doing this to kind of get an idea of like the three-dimensionality of it, like how deep does it go or what? And then after like 10 seconds of just staring at it, I realized, oh, it's a cactus. Because there's weird cactuses that are like, like 2 feet tall and like about as wide as a person. And so that just was like your mind starts playing tricks on you, or my mind did while I was out there. So that was like kind of the situation running in there. I was running along the Pima Canyon Trail, or at least according to Google Maps I was. And the idea was to go up, and I was basically going to be running gradually up for about 1,000 feet, and then turn down along the path, not turn, but like the path was going to turn, hit an area called Fat Man's Pass, which I thought was going to be pretty visually interesting. And I was trying to time it in a way where like I'd be there around like 6-ish, so hopefully with it being 1,000 feet above like grade or like the lower level of the ground, I might be able to get some sunrise light into that area and get some cool footage of it. That ended up not happening. At some point, like I just passed it and I was like, I think I ran through what it was because I saw some pictures of it online beforehand, but I may or may not have actually seen it. But according to my route on Google Maps, I did run right by it. And at that point, I was thinking either I would just turn around once I reached Fat Man's Pass and then go back the way I came, because then I'd have a nice, 1,000 feet of downhill to run, which was like the only reason I even tolerate going uphill or bother with it is because I love running downhill. Running downhill seems to be something that my body like just naturally enjoys and is naturally pretty good at. There's not a lot of things that I'm naturally good at in running, but like downhill running is something that is. So I was like, well, that would be fun. But I also thought, there's lots of trails out here, so let's do this little loop called like the Hidden Valley Pass or the Hidden Valley Trail. So I thought I would do that too, so it would give me more of like a pinhead kind of loop instead of a complete just like out and back for this trail. So I'm doing that. I'm using my Google Maps system where I've like mapped my like a multi-point route so I can go along this trail and things seem to be fine. And then all of a sudden, I'm exactly where, like I'm looking at my phone and I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm looking around and it's like I'm running inside a crater. So for the most part, I was running up and you could see that you're running like up a hill. where I could look to one side or another and I could see the area from whence I came and the lights and the city, and like it's starting to get brighter out, and it just seemed like I was running up a hill. But then I think probably when I got to around the Fat Man's Pass part, like it's as if you run into a crater, or like you're running probably on the other side of a ridge, but then there's another ridge or some sort of geological formation where like all of a sudden all I could see around me was rocks, and like I was like underneath rocks in a way, right? And so like I was kind of in a depressed area where there was like walls all around me. And once I was out in this part in the Nature Valley, Hidden Valley path, I realized I'm surrounded by these rocks, and doesn't seem to be like another way to go. I think I'm in the right place. I'm looking at my phone, and it looks like I'm in the right place, but all I could see in front of me is what looks kind of like a drop off. Now at this point, the kind of geography of the area changed a little bit, where it had been kind of like sandy dirt, kind of like a hill, like a desert trail. It had become just like these giant, huge slabs of rock. I just felt like I was on a different planet. And I've kind of experienced this in that area before. But in this particular spot, it was really different. The rocks were like smooth, not in like a riverbed kind of rock kind of way, but smooth. And because everything normally looks like really jagged out there, like you're on Mars. But these rocks were like much smoother, as if I don't know, like if they were like from a different part of the country. But these were giant, huge boulders that were all over the place. Some of them were as big as like cars. Some of them were as big as like houses. But these giant rocks that seemed to be all very like precariously placed. Obviously, or at least at first I thought obviously they had been in that way for a really long time. But they're just at these really strange angles, and it was really crazy. And looking at my phone and looking around me, it just became apparent to me, and maybe I was wrong on this, but it looked like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. But the only way to move forward was to go down what is an area that there weren't like steps, there wasn't a clear path, it was just rocks, or these giant like sheets of rock. And the only way that I could get from here to there was to slide. And so I did that, thinking like, look, the angle isn't that steep. It's too steep to walk down, especially because it had started raining again. And so things were really wet. And so these rocks were really slippery. And so I was like, I'm not going to try to like lean back and kind of slowly shuffle down there, because if I do, I know I'm going to slip. So I get on my butt and I slide down at what felt like, 10, 20 feet, but I'm sure it was like 4 feet, 3 feet, something not that far. And so I'm looking at it and I'm doing kind of like visualizing it in my head. I could see kind of what's down there. I'm like, all right, it's not like I'm sliding into sand. I'm sliding and there'll be another rock where hopefully I could slide and slow down like enough, or slide slow enough that I can then put my feet on this thing and then this thing, and then there'll be sand or dirt or earth. Flat earth that's not rocky below it, and then I'll kind of like, do a little dance when I get down there to navigate those rocks. So I'm like, this is a terrible idea. But I'm like, but I can see that after I do that, then it looks like there's more trail ahead. And it almost looks manicured because of the way that the sand and the vegetation is in that area. So I'm like, okay, this is the one thing that I got to do. I'll just do it, and then we'll go. So I do that, and I go, and I start running down through some more trail. And then the rocks just keep kind of closing like in on me further and further. And I'm looking back and I'm like, I can't go back up that way because things are slippery now. I really hope that this doesn't end up in a dead end, because I don't know how I'm going to get out. If I have to go, if this doesn't end up being a way out or having a way out, I don't know how to get back up there. So I keep running, and then I come to another spot where there's a shorter drop, but it's steeper, and I have to do the same thing again. So I'm now again sliding on my butt again. It's raining harder. I can see less, and I've still got my phone in one hand and my selfie stick in the other. And so after the second one, I'm still sliding, and this one's a little bit shorter, so I feel okay about it, but it's a little bit steeper. Still getting really nervous about it. But then I'm like, but then after that, there's more flat trail, and I could see it. There is definitely a wall of like rocks ahead, so I'm a little bit nervous about like, is this just going to end up in me and like, again, in a dead end? But I'm just going to keep going because I don't really know what else to do at this point. And it looks on the map like I'm going the exact right way. I'm following the trail. And so I keep doing it a second time, and then there's a third time where it's not very steep at all, but it's very long. It's like a really long, gradual slope down, but then it looks like there's lots of more sand. And so I do this third one, and the incline was gradual enough that I slid on my butt a third time, and then I stopped like 10 feet from the edge of where like the rock hit the sand. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I think that's it. So I get up and I start to run, and that's, when I fell, because like it was still too steep to run, not steep enough to slide. And so that's when I fell, and I landed really hard on like my right backside. Hurt my hand a little bit. This was bleeding quite a bit. Well, not too bad. I've had worse bleeds before, but it was bleeding right a bit. Some scrapes on my other hand, my knuckle, but things were fine. At that point, I just stopped. As I was falling, I was thinking I'm going to hit my head. And I was like, previous to that, my concerns were like turning an ankle, breaking something. And then I was realizing like all the risk were like and like the horrible scenarios were suddenly coming into mind. I took a break and I stopped. I was like, I can't film anything in here. It's too dark. I don't want to film anything in here. I don't feel like it. I'm not having fun. So I put the camera away in my pack, and I just kind of kept following the map, which it looked like I was in the right place the entire time. So I just kept following the map and kept running. And as I was running, I was just thinking like, I could have hit my head, and then like what if I were knocked unconscious for a while? What if there are animals down in here that are maybe opportunistic carnivores? Like, so if I've turned an ankle and I can't move, or I've broken a leg and can't move, then I have to like fight them with my selfie stick. I was also just thinking about like, what if it had been raining in the desert for 2 days at that point straight, sometimes very hard. Like, what if these giant rocks that are very precariously balanced suddenly now move because the earth underneath them isn't like solid earth. Earth underneath them is like dirt and sand. So like all of a sudden I was just thinking like all these rocks that I just slid down, what if they're only in this weird position because they had just moved and they're going to move again? I was like, what if I have to slide one more time, and then the next time I slide and I have to put my ankle on something, rocks come in and pinch me in, and it's one of those situations where someone has to like cut off their own limb to get out. Like I didn't like, all these like weird nightmare scenarios were happening. And at that point, I think I had gotten into this weird enough rock formation where like I was not anymore getting cell signal, even though I was like 10 miles from downtown of Phoenix. So I was just really freaking out at that point. And at that point, that's when I got to like one geological formation that I was actually hoping to find, although it came at the absolute worst time, where basically there were all these rocks, giant, huge rocks, and the only way through was to run in a little like spot, a little tunnel underneath all of them. And I was like, I just spent all this time thinking about how all this water is going to make all these rocks move, and now I'm going to run underneath them. And so like I stopped at the front of it for a second. I was like, all right, we're doing this. And I just sprinted through it as fast as I could. I hoped that the terrain underneath would be fine. It ended up being like just sandy, and so a little bit like running on a beach a little bit because everything was wet. So it wasn't like craggy or rocky or anything. So I was able to like sprint through it pretty quickly, although like crouching down a little bit like this. Once I got through there, then I think I was really close to getting back onto the Pima Canyon Trail. And at that point, I was able to just kind of just follow my route back along the way I came. Things kind of looked familiar, but the rain was coming down really hard, and like the shirt I had on, like I just felt like I was a little bit on the cold side of shirt and shorts and a pack on. I had plenty of fluids with me. I had gels with me in case I got like really, really lost. So I had plenty. I wasn't worried about that, but I wanted to get back, but I wasn't protected enough from like the elements. Or it's not that I wasn't. I did have a jacket in my pack. I didn't feel the need to put it on, but like the rain was hitting me, and it was cloudy, and so it was like humid in a cold way. That it just felt like I was running almost naked, because like everything was just stuck to me. And so just, I felt really like vulnerable and exposed out there on the rock, or on the hill. So it was just a really strange feeling. And then by the last mile is relatively flat, like access road, like a car, it's wide enough that a car could drive on it or a truck could drive on it. And at that point I was just trying to run in relatively hard, really looking for, because I remembered that part and I could kind of see where the car would be. And that's where I started seeing some more people too. So I was just like running a little bit harder because I just wanted the run to be over. I didn't like being out there. I hadn't been having a good time for, a good solid hour at that point. And so, I finally made it back to the car. I cleaned myself up, knowing that I've fallen in these trails before, not this particular trail, but in this area before. So I had bandages. I had grabbed a towel from the hotel, and I had extra water in the car to kind of clean and wash myself off. So I did all that, and I just kept thinking about how this could have really gone so sideways. I really could have gotten myself into real big trouble out there, and no one would have known. So, because it's not like I told people where I was going or that anyone at the conference would have known to like, hey, how come we don't see Mike around? So like it was, the weather conditions were in such a state that like normally I see lots of other people on these trails out in this part of the country, but I saw hardly any. And in any of the parts where I thought I might fall or get hurt or something bad could happen, I definitely didn't see any people there. And so like a lot of risks. I normally get lost all the time. It's been kind of a joke around here on this channel. And those of you who have even gone on runs with me, where I've planned the route, have experienced it too, where I just get lost all the time. But, and it's been funny until now. And I just didn't find it funny. I didn't find it fun. I wasn't having a good time out there. I didn't feel like I was like, oh, at least I'm getting a good workout. There was nothing about it that I found enjoyable. And so I know lots of other people do trail running all the time. Lots of people run probably exactly where I run all the time. And they have a great time doing it all the time. That's fine. I'm not saying other people shouldn't. I'm just saying for me, figuring out like, I feel like I hit a real, not wall, but I really came up to the limits of my abilities today in a very scary way. And so I'm just going to take a break from trail running for a while. Unless I'm going with someone, or it's like a group run or someone that's been in the area and knows the area. Like I wasn't having enough fun to offset kind of the risks that I ran into on this particular day. I'm safe. I'm fine. I ran the following day from that day just fine. So nothing's like damaged, but like I just got real scared. And so I'm just going to stay away from that for a little while. So that's my story of day 2 running in the hills of Arizona and Phoenix. If you guys are trail runners, I'm really impressed. It's just amazing what you guys can do. It's not, I don't think it's for me. Before I go, I do want to remind you guys about the charity runner of the week, though. This week it's Stephanie Ryan, who's training for the Boston Marathon, which is now going to be in September. I haven't followed up with Stephanie. I'll send her out an email to see if she's still going to be running. But when she was going to be running in April, I did donate $70 of my own money to her fundraising efforts. She's going to be raising money for UNICEF, which was to help children. And a lot of you guys have helping out as well. I'm going to have to kind of like refigure some things out in terms of like what's the situation with charity fundraising for like all these marathons that have been postponed and moved to September now. So I'll kind of do some research and figure some of that out. I think like all the charity running efforts and the fundraising efforts still kind of apply. I can't imagine it would go away. But if anything, it gives people more time now to hit those fundraising goals. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in tomorrow's video in terms of like, with everything that's been happening, what's going on forward. But that's all I'm going to have for today's video, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to my story and also for making it all the way to the end of the video. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
Yo, what's going on?